The dimly lit chamber of the diplomatic hall buzzed with an electric tension, a mix of anticipation and unease. The air shimmered faintly under the glow of bioluminescent panels embedded in the walls, casting soft hues that seemed to pulse in rhythm with something ancient yet alive. Around him, representatives from various species moved with calculated grace, their forms alien but deliberate as they exchanged pleasantries or whispered behind translucent veils of protocol. Amidst this sea of unfamiliarity, he stood, a human male clad in his simple gray uniform, unremarkable by interstellar standards but unmistakably out of place. His eyes scanned the room, catching glimpses of beings whose biology defied comprehension, iridescent scales that shifted colors like liquid prisms, tendrils that floated lazily above heads as if carried by invisible currents, and eyes, so many eyes, that blinked in patterns too complex for him to decipher. He felt small here, dwarfed not just by their numbers but by the sheer weight of their histories, cultures, and mysteries. Yet it wasn't fear that gripped him. Rather, it was awe mingled with a gnawing curiosity about the unknown. And then she entered. Her presence was immediate and commanding, swallowing up the space around her as though even light itself bent to accommodate her arrival. She glided forward on 6 elegant limbs, each step resonating with a quiet authority that demanded attention without ever asking for it. Her skin, or what passed for skin, was a luminous expanse of shifting opalescence, refracting every color imaginable while somehow remaining impossible to pin down. Her elongated frame tapered into delicate curves, her form both fluid and statuesque, as though sculpted by forces beyond mortal understanding. Atop her head, crystalline structures resembling antlers caught the ambient light, scattering rainbows across the room. But it was her face, or what he assumed was her face, that arrested him entirely. It wasn't quite humanoid, nor was it anything else he could name. Her features were symmetrical yet otherworldly, defined by smooth ridges and subtle indentations that hinted at expressions far more nuanced than any human language could convey. And her eyes. They were vast, deep pools of swirling galaxies, pulling him in despite himself. To look into them was to feel infinitesimal, as though staring into the heart of creation itself. He froze where he stood, unable to tear his gaze away. His breath hitched audibly, drawing a few curious glances from nearby delegates who likely mistook his reaction for shock or awe. But it was neither. It was something deeper, primal, and utterly inexplicable. Every instinct screamed at him to look elsewhere, to maintain composure, to remember why he was there. Instead, he found himself transfixed, rooted to the spot as though gravity had been rewritten solely to keep him anchored before her. For a moment, time seemed to stretch infinitely. Conversations faded into white noise, movements blurred into abstraction, until all that remained was her and him, locked together across the gulf between worlds. He didn't know whether she noticed immediately or chose to ignore him at first, but when their gazes finally met, the universe tilted on its axis. Her expression, if such a word could suffice, shifted ever so slightly, the faintest ripple crossing her radiant surface like wind over water. "I can't stop looking at you today," he murmured, the words spilling forth unbidden, breaking the silence between them like a stone dropped into still waters. It was reckless, foolish even, given the context of formal negotiations and fragile alliances. Yet he couldn't help himself. Something about her defied logic, transcended protocol, and rendered every carefully rehearsed line useless. Her response came not in words but in action. A flush spread across her shimmering exterior, a cascade of warmer tones rippling outward from her core. If he hadn't known better, he might have called it embarrassment, but no, it was richer than that, layered with emotions he lacked the vocabulary to describe. Her crystalline adornments vibrated softly, emitting a low hum that resonated through the chamber, carrying undertones of surprise and something else. Curiosity, amusement. He couldn't tell. Then she spoke, not in the melodic cadence of universal translators but in her own voice, raw and unfiltered, bypassing technology altogether. The sound enveloped him, a chorus of harmonics that seemed to resonate within his very bones. It wasn't English, nor any tongue he recognized, yet somehow, impossibly, he understood. Not the literal meaning, perhaps, but the essence, an acknowledgement, a question, a challenge. What happened next would change everything. As the vibrations of her voice settled into the chamber, a palpable shift occurred. The other delegates paused mid-conversation, their multifaceted eyes swiveling toward the two figures standing frozen in mutual fascination. Some emitted low clicks of disapproval, while others watched with what appeared to be cautious interest. One ambassador, draped in flowing robes that seemed woven from starlight, stepped closer, his translucent hands raised in a gesture that could have meant anything from warning to blessing. The human felt the weight of dozens of alien gazes pressing down on him, some critical, others intrigued, but none indifferent. It was clear now that his impulsive admission had shattered the delicate veneer of decorum expected in this setting. This wasn't merely a breach of etiquette, it was a disruption of cosmic proportions, akin to throwing a pebble into a black hole and watching the ripples distort reality itself. Protocol dictated that humans remain stoic observers, respectful participants in negotiations governed by centuries-old treaties and hierarchies. Yet here he stood, openly vulnerable before a being whose power and influence transcended planetary boundaries. The Queen's glowing countenance continued to radiate warmth, her initial flush evolving into a kaleidoscope of colors that pulsed in sync with her crystalline appendages. Each vibration carried layers of meaning, broadcasting emotions and intentions across the spectrum of visible and invisible wavelengths. To his astonishment, he realized that these chromatic displays weren't random. They formed intricate patterns, almost like sentences written in light, conveying messages far more complex than mere words could express. Through the translator embedded in his collar, fragmented phrases began filtering through: unprecedented, connection, risk. These snippets coalesced into a mosaic of interpretations, painting a picture of how profoundly his actions had resonated within the assembled dignitaries. For beings accustomed to rigid social structures and precise communication protocols, witnessing such raw emotional transparency was both unsettling and mesmerizing. One particularly imposing delegate, encased in armor that reflected distorted images of those around him, approached the pair with deliberate slowness. His multiple limbs clicked together rhythmically, producing a sound reminiscent of distant thunder. As he neared, the air thickened further, charged with an energy that made the hairs on the back of the human's neck stand on end. Without uttering a single syllable, this towering figure extended one segmented limb toward the Queen, pausing inches from her radiant form. In response, she inclined her upper body slightly, acknowledging his presence with a subtlety that only heightened the drama unfolding before them. The human sensed the gravity of the situation intensifying. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the implications of interspecies interaction on a scale previously unimaginable. By speaking directly from his heart, he had inadvertently opened a portal to possibilities both wondrous and perilous. Would this moment herald a new era of understanding, bridging gaps between civilizations separated by millennia of evolution? Or would it ignite tensions long suppressed beneath layers of diplomatic niceties? Amidst the swirling uncertainty, one thing became crystal clear. Whatever path lay ahead, it would be forged not by adherence to tradition but by embracing the unpredictable beauty of connection. And as the Queen turned her galaxy-spanning gaze back upon him, he knew, deep within his soul, that retreat was no longer an option. The Queen's next movement sent waves of anticipation coursing through the chamber. With measured grace, she extended one of her elongated limbs, its surface shimmering with hues that danced like flames against a dark sky. The gesture was deliberate, almost ceremonial, yet infused with an intimacy that left the human breathless. Her crystalline antlers flared slightly, casting prismatic reflections across the room, illuminating every corner with fleeting rainbows. It was as though she sought not only his attention but also the collective focus of all present, ensuring that this exchange would be etched indelibly into the annals of interstellar history. He took a hesitant step forward, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. Yet, instead of shrinking under their scrutiny, he found himself buoyed by an inexplicable courage. Perhaps it was the resonance of her earlier response, the way her voice had bypassed barriers of language and culture to touch something primal within him. Whatever the source, he felt compelled to meet her halfway, to bridge the chasm between them despite the impossibility of truly understanding her world. When their forms finally aligned, separated by mere inches, the air crackled with an intensity that seemed to warp reality itself. She tilted her head, her galaxy-like eyes narrowing fractionally, as if scrutinizing not just his physical presence but the essence of his being. Then came another ripple across her opalescent skin, this time cooler and more contemplative, signaling a shift in mood. Her crystalline structures hummed softly again, vibrating at frequencies that stirred memories buried deep within his subconscious. Childhood dreams of stars and endless skies, forgotten hopes, and untapped desires. In that moment, he realized that her responses were not merely reactions. they were invitations. Invitations to explore realms beyond comprehension, to delve into mysteries hidden within the fabric of existence itself. Through her, he glimpsed fragments of stories older than time, narratives woven from stardust and shadow, tales of civilizations rising and falling like tides under cosmic winds. And somehow, amidst these visions, he saw himself, not as a solitary figure adrift in the vastness of space, but as part of something greater, interconnected with all life in ways he had never dared imagine. A sudden surge of emotion overwhelmed him, manifesting physically as tears welled up in his eyes. He blinked rapidly, trying to regain control, but the floodgates had opened. The queen's luminous form softened, her colors shifting once more, this time adopting a soothing palette of blues and silvers. She reached out again, her limb hovering near his cheek without making contact, as if respecting the sanctity of personal boundaries while offering solace nonetheless. Around them, the chamber grew silent, save for the gentle hum of her crystalline adornments. Even the most skeptical delegates appeared transfixed, their usual stoicism giving way to expressions of wonderment. The armored figure who had approached earlier now stood motionless, his reflective surface mirroring the scene before him, a testament to the profound impact of what was unfolding. With trembling hands, the human reached up, mimicking her gesture. Though his fingers stopped short of touching her radiant skin, the act alone seemed to forge a bond stronger than any physical connection could achieve. In that shared moment of vulnerability and trust, barriers dissolved, leaving behind only the pure, unadulterated truth of their encounter. And still, the story of their meeting was far from over. The chamber, once buzzing with restrained energy, now pulsed with an almost tangible force as the human and the alien queen stood suspended in their shared moment. Their connection sparked whispers among the gathered beings, each interpretation filtered through the lens of their respective cultures and experiences. Some viewed the unfolding scene with reverence, seeing echoes of ancient prophecies or divine unions foretold in celestial alignments. Others regarded it with suspicion, interpreting the breach of protocol as a potential threat to established order. Yet, regardless of perspective, none could deny the magnetic pull of the spectacle before them. For the human, the weight of the moment pressed heavily upon his chest, not with dread but with an exhilarating sense of purpose. He had come to this gathering prepared to negotiate trade agreements and discuss resource allocations, tasks that now seemed trivial compared to the magnitude of what was transpiring. Here, amidst beings who commanded galaxies and wielded powers beyond human imagination, he found himself at the epicenter of something far greater, a collision of destinies that defied logic yet promised transformation. The queen's presence loomed large, not just physically but emotionally. Each shift in her luminescent skin told a story, each vibration of her crystalline antlers conveyed a sentiment too profound for words. Her very existence challenged his understanding of life, love, and connection, forcing him to confront the limitations of his own perception. Yet, paradoxically, she also offered clarity, a glimpse into the infinite possibilities lying just beyond the horizon of known reality. As their gazes remained locked, he felt a stirring within himself, a yearning to transcend the confines of his humanity and embrace the boundless potential of the cosmos. It was terrifying and intoxicating all at once, a call to adventure that resonated deep within his soul. But accompanying this desire was a sobering awareness of responsibility. This encounter wasn't merely about him. It was about the future of relations between species, about forging alliances that could reshape the trajectory of entire civilizations. The implications weighed heavily on his mind. What did it mean to connect so deeply with someone, or something, so fundamentally different? Could such a bond withstand the pressures of politics, prejudice, and the inevitable misunderstandings that arose when worlds collided? And what sacrifices might be demanded in the pursuit of unity? Yet, even as doubts crept in, they were countered by a fierce determination. If there was one truth he clung to amidst the chaos, it was that moments like these, raw, unscripted, and brimming with possibility, were rare and precious. To shy away from them would be to deny the very essence of exploration, the driving force that had propelled humanity across stars and galaxies. So, despite the risks, he resolved to move forward, to let the current carry him wherever it may lead. Around them, the chamber continued to hold its collective breath, the delegates' varied expressions reflecting the spectrum of reactions elicited by the unfolding drama. Some leaned in, eager to witness the outcome of this unprecedented interaction, while others retreated into themselves, perhaps grappling with their own emotions or fears. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, charged with the knowledge that history was being written in real time, shaped by decisions yet to be made. And at the heart of it all stood two figures, one human, one alien, bound together by threads invisible yet unbreakable, poised on the precipice of discovery. Their journey had only begun, and already, it promised to redefine everything they thought they knew about themselves and the universe they inhabited. As the human and the alien queen remained locked in their profound exchange, the chamber's ambience transformed further, becoming a living tapestry of anticipation and intrigue. The delegates, initially spectators to an unexpected drama, now found themselves swept into the orbit of the unfolding narrative. Some leaned forward, their multifaceted eyes gleaming with curiosity, while others exchanged rapid-fire communications in languages that flickered like lightning across the room. The air was thick with the hum of conjecture, each whisper weaving new strands into the web of possibilities surrounding the pair. Among the gathered beings, one figure stood out, a diminutive entity cloaked in shimmering veils that seemed to dissolve and reform with every step. Its movements were fluid, almost serpentine, as it navigated the crowd with an elegance that belied its size. When it finally reached the periphery of the human and the queen, it paused, tilting its head in a manner that suggested both calculation and wonder. From beneath its translucent hood emerged tendrils of light, which stretched toward the couple, pulsing gently as if seeking permission to join their sacred space. The human noticed the approach but did not break his gaze from the queen. Instead, he tightened his resolve, allowing the newcomer's presence to blend seamlessly into the tableau. The queen, however, responded with a subtle shift in her radiant skin, her colors darkening momentarily before blooming anew in patterns reminiscent of dawn breaking over an alien horizon. It was unclear whether this signaled approval, caution, or something else entirely, but the smaller being interpreted it as an invitation, stepping closer until it was nearly bathed in the glow of her aura. Elsewhere in the chamber, another delegate, a towering quadruped with crystalline fur that refracted light into dazzling arrays, emitted a series of low growls, each note carrying undertones of both admiration and unease. Its massive form cast long shadows across the floor, yet it moved with surprising delicacy, circling the central figures at a respectful distance. As it paced, its crystalline coat sparkled with bursts of color, creating a visual symphony that mirrored the emotional turbulence rippling through the room. To the human, it felt as though the creature was attempting to communicate without words, using its very presence to add layers of meaning to the moment. Meanwhile, clusters of ambassadors began forming, their discussions growing animated as they speculated on the significance of the encounter. One group, composed of beings with translucent bodies through which internal organs pulsed visibly, engaged in a heated debate, their voices overlapping in harmonics that rose and fell like ocean waves. Another cluster, dominated by insectoid creatures with iridescent wings that fluttered softly, adopted a more contemplative tone, their antennae twitching in unison as they processed the implications of what they were witnessing. In the midst of this cacophony, a lone figure remained apart, a humanoid draped in robes spun from what appeared to be liquid metal. Its face was obscured by a mask that shimmered with constantly shifting patterns, making it impossible to discern any expression. Yet its posture radiated authority, and when it finally spoke, its voice cut through the din like a blade slicing silk. The words, though unintelligible to the human, resonated with a clarity that transcended language, drawing all eyes briefly toward it before returning to the focal point of the drama. The queen, attuned to the shifting dynamics around her, adjusted her stance ever so slightly. Her crystalline adornments vibrated in response, their hum modulating into a melody that seemed to weave together the disparate threads of emotion swirling through the chamber. The human felt it reverberate within him, a reminder that this moment belonged not solely to him and the queen but to everyone present, each contributing their unique perspective to the unfolding narrative. Time lost its linear quality as the scene unfolded, moments stretching and compressing unpredictably. The human became acutely aware of the collective heartbeat of the chamber, a rhythm created by the interplay of individual reactions and shared anticipation. Every breath drawn, every movement made, added to the intricate choreography of connection and consequence playing out before them. And still, the story refused to settle, each beat of the metaphorical drum propelling it forward into uncharted territory. The human and the queen remained at its center, their bond serving as both anchor and catalyst, drawing others inexorably into the orbit of their shared destiny. The chamber's energy reached a crescendo, yet it was not chaotic, it was alive, electric, and humming with purpose. The human felt the weight of every gaze, heard the symphony of murmurs that rose and fell like waves against an unseen shore. But none of it mattered compared to the luminous being before him. Her presence anchored him, grounding him even as her essence seemed to pull him into realms beyond comprehension. He could feel her emotions, or what he interpreted as emotions, rippling through the air between them, a language spoken in light and vibration that transcended anything his species had ever known. The diminutive figure cloaked in shimmering veils drew closer still, its tendrils of light now brushing softly against the edges of the queen's radiant aura. She responded with a subtle tilt of her crystalline antlers, their prismatic glow intensifying momentarily before softening once more. To the human, it was as though she were granting permission, not just to this curious entity but perhaps to all those gathered, to bear witness to something sacred. And yet, there was no sense of submission in her actions. Rather, they carried an air of quiet authority, as if she understood instinctively how to wield vulnerability as power. From the corner of his eye, he noticed the towering quadruped with the crystalline fur paws mid-stride, its massive form casting intricate shadows across the floor. Its growls deepened, resonating like distant thunder, and then abruptly ceased. For a moment, the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, deliberately, the creature lowered itself onto its haunches, bowing its great head until its glittering coat nearly touched the ground. It was an act of deference, one so profound that it silenced even the most animated debates among the delegates. The human swallowed hard, realizing that what was unfolding here was no mere diplomatic exchange. It was a convergence of forces far greater than any treaty or alliance. As the quadruped rose again, its crystalline fur shimmered with new patterns, reflecting hues that hadn't been present before. These colors danced across the walls, blending seamlessly with the bioluminescent panels above. It was as though the room itself were responding to the emotional undercurrents coursing through the assembly, transforming into a living canvas that mirrored the collective awe and uncertainty. The humanoid draped in liquid metal robes stepped forward next, its shifting mask catching fragments of light that made it appear both fluid and solid simultaneously. When it spoke, its voice did not rely on words alone. It resonated as a series of overlapping frequencies, each tone carrying layers of meaning that bypassed conscious thought and settled directly into the soul. Though the human couldn't understand the literal translation, he felt it, a question, a challenge, a plea. The queen turned her galaxy-spanning gaze toward the figure, her opalescent skin rippling with shades of violet and gold. Whatever passed between them was invisible yet unmistakable, a silent dialogue that seemed to bridge eons of evolution and experience. Then came movement from the cluster of insectoid beings. Their iridescent wings fluttered in unison, creating a soft breeze that carried with it the faint scent of something floral yet otherworldly. One of them detached itself from the group, its delicate frame gliding forward with a grace that belied its fragile appearance. As it approached, its antennae quivered, sensing the charged atmosphere around the human and the queen. When it finally stopped, hovering at the edge of their shared space, it emitted a series of chirps and clicks that formed a melody unlike anything the human had ever heard. It wasn't music in the traditional sense. It was communication, art, and emotion rolled into one, a tribute offered freely and without expectation. The queen acknowledged the gesture with a gentle pulse of light that radiated outward, enveloping the insectoid being in a warm embrace of color. The human watched, awestruck, as the creature's wings flared brightly for a moment before returning to their usual subdued shimmer. There was gratitude in that response, recognition of a bond forged in the instant between sound and silence. But amidst these acts of reverence and curiosity, tension lingered. Not everyone in the chamber viewed the unfolding scene with approval. Near the back of the room, a trio of reptilian delegates exchanged sharp glances, their slit-pupilled eyes narrowing in suspicion. Their scales, which normally shifted through muted earth tones, now darkened to shades of black and crimson, an unmistakable sign of unease. One of them leaned in close to another, issuing a low hiss that carried undertones of warning. Though their voices remained too quiet to decipher, their body language spoke volumes. They saw danger in this unscripted connection, a potential disruption to the carefully maintained balance of power. The human caught sight of them briefly, their hostility palpable even from across the chamber. His heart quickened, but instead of fear, he felt defiance rise within him. This encounter wasn't about politics or control. It was about something far deeper, something primal and universal. Yet, he knew better than to dismiss their concerns outright. Involving himself with the queen, however unintentionally, had consequences that extended far beyond his personal desires. Entire worlds might hang in the balance. their futures shaped by decisions made in this single, extraordinary moment. As if sensing his internal conflict, the queen extended one of her limbs toward him again. This time, she allowed her appendage to hover closer, almost, but not quite, touching his shoulder. Her touch was implied rather than physical, a gesture that conveyed reassurance without crossing boundaries. The human exhaled slowly, feeling some of the tension ease from his body. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he realized, they would face them together, not as equals, necessarily, but as partners navigating uncharted waters. Around them, the chamber continued to evolve. The delegates' reactions formed a mosaic of perspectives, each piece contributing to the larger picture of what this event meant for interstellar relations. Some saw hope, a chance to break free from old patterns and forge new alliances. Others saw risk, the potential unraveling of centuries-old protocols and hierarchies. And still others saw inevitability, as though the universe itself had conspired to bring these two beings together at this precise moment in time. The human glanced at the queen, meeting her swirling infinite gaze once more. In her eyes, he saw galaxies birthing stars and civilizations rising and falling. He saw eternity compressed into a single, fleeting second. And he saw himself, not as a solitary figure but as part of something vast and interconnected, a thread woven into the fabric of existence itself. The queen's crystalline antlers hummed softly, their vibrations resonating through the chamber like a final note in an unfinished symphony. Her luminous form pulsed once more, this time with colors that seemed to encapsulate both dawn and dusk, hope intertwined with inevitability. The human felt her gaze linger on him, not as an observer but as a participant in something far greater than either of them could yet comprehend. Around them, the delegates stirred, their collective energy shifting from awe to anticipation. Some began to retreat into the safety of protocol, while others leaned forward, eager to see where this uncharted path might lead. The humanoid in liquid metal robes stepped back, its mask now calm and unreadable, leaving behind only the faintest ripple of sound, a whisper of approval or warning, it was impossible to tell. The towering quadruped rose fully, its crystalline fur shimmering with renewed brilliance, as if reflecting the choices yet to be made. The insectoid beings fluttered closer together, their wings creating a soft harmony that seemed to echo the uncertainty in the air. Even the reptilian trio fell silent, though their darkened scales betrayed their unease. The queen turned slightly, her movements deliberate and fluid, as if signaling that the moment had reached its zenith. She extended her limb once more, this time brushing it lightly against the human shoulder, a fleeting touch that sent shivers coursing through him. It was acknowledgement, gratitude, and perhaps even trust. "I can't stop looking at you," he murmured again, his voice barely audible over the hum of the chamber. Her response came not in words, but in a cascade of radiant hues that spoke of possibilities stretching beyond the stars. And then, without warning, she stepped back, her form glowing brighter for a fraction of a second before dimming to a gentle luminescence. The chamber seemed to exhale collectively, the tension easing but not dissipating entirely. The human stood frozen, his mind racing with questions he couldn't yet articulate. What had just happened? What would come next? As the delegates resumed their conversations, their tones hushed but animated, he realized the answers wouldn't come easily, or quickly. The queen gazed at him one last time, her galaxy-like eyes holding promises and challenges alike. Then, with a grace that defied description, she turned and glided toward the exit, her crystalline adornments casting final rainbows across the room. The chamber watched her go, transfixed, until the door closed behind her with a soft hiss.